Have you ever felt that crushing weight of silence when the world seems to have forgotten you? That ache isn't a flaw, it's an invitation. In the next few minutes, you'll discover why solitude isn't a punishment, but a sacred passage to your truest self. Drawing on Carl Jung's revolutionary insights, this video will show you how periods of aloneness become the crucible for authentic transformation. You'll learn why the greatest thinkers from Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree to Jung in his Red Book embraced isolation as a launchpad for creativity, purpose, and inner strength. Stay with us until the end, because you'll uncover how to move from feeling abandoned to experiencing profound self-acceptance. The step-by-step process Jung called individuation, where you integrate your shadows into wholeness. Practical strategies for turning restless nights into powerful moments of clarity. Ways to build unshakable self-validation, so you stop chasing external approval. Secrets to transforming your return to the world, not as the same person, but as someone reborn with a deeper purpose and presence. If you're ready to stop running from discomfort and start earning the gift of solitude, watch on and prepare to meet yourself in a whole new light. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. I've always found it both terrifying and beautiful that Carl Jung believed our unconscious mind, the deep, hidden reservoir of our unspoken desires, our secret fears, our raw instincts, and those forgotten truths we tuck away becomes most accessible when we finally step away from all outside influence. In the sacred hush of solitude, the unconscious doesn't shout in tidy sentences. Instead, it whispers in emotions that catch you off guard, in vivid, curious dreams that won't let you sleep, in memories you thought were buried forever, and in those inexplicable aha moments that seem to erupt from nowhere. Trust me, these aren't random glitches. They're vital messages, gentle clues from the deepest corners of your soul. Yet our culture relentlessly tells us to keep moving, to drown out any hint of silence with activity, to hide from the discomfort of stillness. I'll admit, it feels counterintuitive to stop everything to pause, to truly feel the tremors beneath the surface, and to listen even when what you hear might scare you to your core. But this, I believe, is where genuine transformation lives, in the alchemy of solitude, that slow, mysterious process of turning silence into an authentic sense of I am. Transformation is never instantaneous. It doesn't arrive in a single movie-style epiphany. Instead, it unfolds like a seed wrestling its way through dark soil. First comes the weight of darkness, then the relentless pressure, and finally, the stirring of new life beneath your feet. But it requires your active participation. If you fight that solitude, if you plaster over it with distractions, or run screaming back into the noise, the change simply can't take root. You remain trapped in familiar loops, clutching at the identities others have shaped for you, too scared to meet the real you. This is where Jung's concept of shadow work becomes not just useful, but indispensable. Your shadow is everything you've banished, from the traits you hate in yourself to the emotions you vow never to feel, from the truths you refuse to admit. These parts do not vanish. They lurk in the dark, waiting for the moment you can't avoid them any longer. When you finally embrace solitude, the shadow steps forward. You may be flooded with anger you didn't realize you were harboring, with grief you've locked away, with envy or guilt or deep-seated fears. It can be overwhelming. My own heart has pounded through these moments, but Jung insisted that making peace with these shadow parts is the very gateway to wholeness. When solitude is met with courage, it becomes the arena for your reclamation. You begin to gather yourself, piece by painful piece, like finding shards of a broken mirror and fitting them back into a new shape. Most of us chase happiness by fleeing pain, but real, enduring peace comes when you stop running and turn to face it. When you learn to sit with your pain, to listen and learn from it, it gradually loses its power to control you. And then, miraculously, a clarity emerges. You start to see which friendships and relationships never felt genuine. You recognize how you've sacrificed your own needs to earn approval. You realize you've been performing a role rather than truly living your life. And then you can reclaim it, not the life others scripted for you, but one that resonates with your deepest truth. That, to me, is the most honest kind of freedom. In that quiet chorus of solitude, you may even hear your inner child again, not the wounded one, but the playful, curious spark you once had. You may remember dreams you abandoned because they seemed impractical. Suddenly, those dreams don't feel impossible, they feel unavoidable. It's a bittersweet awakening, and I'll admit, one I cherish more with every passing day. The heartbreaking truth is that most people will never dive this deep. They'll skirt the edges of their own lives, perpetually afraid of being alone with their minds. They mistake solitude for loneliness and miss the hidden treasure waiting just beneath the discomfort. But if you've been drawn into solitude, whether by choice or by life's relentless insistence, consider it a profound gift. In its quiet embrace, you'll find the keys to your truest, most expansive self. I've come to believe that solitude offers us something far greater than mere comfort. Yes, it can feel cold and empty at first, but it also offers truth, and truth is anything but gentle. It's a blade that slices through the illusions we cling to. It's a mirror that refuses to flatter us. It's a challenge that demands real change. And yet, in that very challenge lies liberation. By burning away the false layers we've built around ourselves, solitude makes space for the real, raw essence of who we are. Look at those rare souls who emerge from long seasons of aloneness. Their strength isn't brash or demanding. It's calm, rooted, and unshakable. They carry a quiet confidence that comes from having faced their inner storms and learned to shelter themselves. I admire how they no longer beg for approval or applause because they've discovered how to validate themselves. They're not afraid of being overlooked or even misunderstood because they have found a deeper, more steadfast approval from within. To me, that is the ultimate gift of solitude. But here's a confession. Solitude isn't something you're handed on a silver platter. You don't simply wake up enlightened. You have to earn it in the crucible of your loneliness. You have to endure nights when the silence presses so heavily on your chest, you feel you might suffocate. You have to sit with the thoughts that claw at your mind, the regrets that sting your heart, the raw ache that brings tears you never knew you needed to shed. And yes, sometimes you'll rage, shaking your fists at the invisible walls around you until you break open. Only then does something new begin to pulse beneath the surface, a stronger, clearer version of you. Carl Jung once warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their souls. How true that rings. But those brave few who dare to meet themselves again and again, with honesty and humility, become something incredibly rare. They become whole. They integrate every fragment of themselves, even the shadowy parts they once feared. And in that integration, they discover a wholeness no crowd, no conversation, no external accolade could ever supply. So if you find yourself in a season of solitude, resist the urge to run. Don't drown the stillness in noise or numb it with distraction. Instead, lean into it. Listen to the rhythm of your breath. Feel the tremors of your deepest fears and wildest hopes. Trust me when I say this empty feeling space is fertile ground, an inner sanctuary where your most extraordinary transformation can take root. You'll emerge with a relationship with yourself so profound and unshakable that no external storm can knock you off course. Because, at its heart, solitude is not punishment or exile, it's reunion with the self you were always meant to become. Think of it as a sacred fire, one that doesn't consume you, but refines you, forging your spirit in heat and vulnerability. When every familiar crutch, other people's voices, social distractions, the roles you play has been stripped away, what remains is the unfiltered you. That vulnerable, quietly powerful core has been waiting for this moment, waiting for space to breathe and rise. And once it does, nothing will ever feel quite the same again. I've come to see Jung's insight, not as an abstract theory, but as a lifeline tossed to anyone who's ever felt lost in their existence. He didn't view these dark passages as mere detours or detours to be feared. He named them the very heartbeat of life itself. Every push into silence, every moment when the world grows distant, is life's insistence that we meet ourselves more fully face to face with that vast, humming underworld of our unconscious, teeming with half-spoken dreams, smoldering fears, raw instincts, and precious truths we thought we'd long ago buried. But let me be honest, that door to our inner world does not swing open amid the clamor of daily distraction. It only cracks when the chorus of texts, calls, and social chatter finally fades away. It opens in those days when invitations vanish, when your phone sits mute, when the stillness presses so close, it almost feels like grief. I've felt that ache in my chest, a hollow ache that at first whispered, "You're forgotten." Yet beneath that crushing quiet, I discovered a hidden invitation to become more honest, more whole, more true to the essence I'd buried. Most people reflexively label isolation as failure, as proof they've been abandoned. I used to think the same, until I noticed that life's most profound rites of passage often arrive unbidden. Think of winter. No one minds that the landscape appears dead, because we know that under that frozen silence, roots are diving deeper, preparing for an even bolder spring. Your solitude is winter in motion, a season when the real work is underground, invisible, unstoppable. That's why Buddhism, mystic Christianity, Sufism, and countless other traditions hold silence and retreat in such high regard. They recognize solitude not as punishment, but as a sacred workshop where the soul is lovingly coaxed home. But don't misunderstand me. This isn't a passive, sit back and wait exercise. You must lean in, actively, compassionately, relentlessly. You must listen to those buried whispers you've spent years drowning out. You must feel the pangs you once numbed with busyness. You must sit with the raw ache, not as a dying ember, but as a seeker on fire. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. In that fierce interior space, something magical happens. The parts of you that once felt like enemies, your regrets, your self-doubts, your hidden shame begin to reveal themselves as messengers. I've seen it in my own life. The moment I stopped fleeing my mistakes and instead held them tenderly, they softened their sting and started pointing me toward growth. This, I believe, is the heart of Jung's individuation, the alchemy of weaving every fragment of yourself, light and shadow alike, into a living tapestry of unity. To embrace this process is to stand before the world and say, "Here I am, raw and undivided." It is to discover that perfection was never the goal, wholeness is. And though the journey through silence can feel like walking through a storm, it ultimately brings you home to a self whose courage, compassion, and authenticity will shine more brightly than any spotlight ever could. I've come to realize that genuine self-acceptance rarely emerges in the hustle and bustle of daily life. It demands something far more elemental, solitude. It demands a willingness to sit in discomfort, to stare into the fire of your own unguarded heart. We live in a society that teaches us to flee from pain, to patch over our wounds with quick fixes and busy distractions. But true healing, healing the kind that seeps down to your bones and reshapes your very soul, is anything but tidy. It's a messy, heart-wrenching journey laced with grief, rage, and those unexpected sparks of beauty that make you catch your breath. It cannot be hurried. It must be honored, felt in every trembling moment. And that, I believe, is the gift solitude offers you, if you dare to embrace it. In those solitary hours, patience becomes your closest friend. Presence unfolds like a secret bloom. Time slows to a gentle rhythm, freeing you from the frantic checklist you've lived by. Suddenly, you notice the simple cadence of your breath, the quiet dance of thoughts behind your eyes, the subtle tremor of emotions you've spent years muffling. It can feel frightening to sit with that rawness, but it's also thrilling, like stepping into a cathedral of your own making. In the hush of solitude, transformation truly begins. You find the courage to forgive not only people who hurt you, but yourself too. You let go of those old, stifling stories, "I'm not enough, I'm broken beyond repair, no one could ever understand me." When you sit with these beliefs long enough, their power dissolves, and you can see the truth shimmering underneath. You start to dream again, not of trophies or accolades, but of meaning. You ask the big, trembling questions. What would it feel like to wake up knowing you belong to yourself? What kind of presence do you want to bring into a world hungry for authenticity? Who are you when every spotlight fades and only your inner voice remains? In answering these questions, you begin to rewrite your life script, no longer penned by outside expectations, but etched in the ink of your truth. Make no mistake, this is sacred work, and it's not for the faint of heart. Many will spend their whole lives running from themselves, filling every corner of their minds with noise and half-formed connections. But if you can find the courage to sit in that stillness, to face the ache, and let it teach you, you will come home to a depth of presence and freedom that nothing in the world can ever steal. But there are those courageous souls who finally halt their frantic sprinting, those who pull up a chair amid their internal blaze and surrender to its transformative heat. I've witnessed this in my own life, and each time it feels like a miracle. By pausing in the fire, by allowing the flames of our fears and sorrows to dance around us rather than fleeing from them, we emerge as something astonishingly rare. We become anchored, our spirits sinking deep into the bedrock of our true selves, and, paradoxically, freer than we've ever dared to be. Of course, these grounded warriors are far from flawless. They still flinch when old wounds crack open, and they ache for connection on lonely nights. They wake in the early hours with echoes of doubt. Yet they carry a treasure others covet, but seldom find, a profound, unwavering calm, born not from sidestepping life's trials, but from meeting them head-on, wide-eyed, and with a heart that still dares to hope. This, to me, is the real alchemy of solitude. It isn't a cruel sentence handed down by fate. It's a sacred passage, a ruthless, yet loving stripping away of every counterfeit comfort, until only your authentic self remains. I feel it in my bones. Once you've been forged in those flames, you carry the wisdom of fire, a silent radiance that guides you and others, like a lighthouse standing steadfast against the storm. And then comes that exquisite turning point. It's so subtle that you almost miss it. No fanfare, no ethereal chime to announce your graduation. Yet, deep in your soul, you sense a shift. The oppressive quiet that once pressed on your chest now feels like a gentle hug. The loneliness that used to sting like a thorn has softened into a peaceful hush. You realize you've walked through the crucible unbroken, but the journey doesn't end there. So many believe that, having endured solitude's trial, you simply slip back into your old life. You don't. You return changed infinitely more yourself, and the world greets you in ways you could never have predicted. Integrating that inner metamorphosis into everyday relationships and routines becomes your next greatest adventure. Carl Jung spoke of this brilliantly. He called it individuation, the sacred work of bringing your unique, authentic self into the light of day. It is hard. Yes, truth is never a gentle companion. It slices through illusion, it unsettles comfortable patterns, and it demands you to be nothing less than real. Yet in that very discomfort lies liberation. Those who emerge on the other side of solitude carry a quiet power that moves mountains. It's not a thunderous roar demanding attention. It's the unwavering confidence of someone who no longer needs an audience to affirm their worth. They have learned to validate themselves, to rest in their presence, and to stand tall even when they're unseen. They'd rather wear truth than chase approval. And in that choice, they become utterly, breathtakingly alive. I've come to believe that solitude is the most generous gift life can offer, because it returns you to yourself raw and unguarded. But make no mistake, this gift is not freely bestowed. It must be earned in the crucible of your quiet despair. You have to sit through the long, trembling nights when the hush presses in like a heavyweight, when every thought seems amplified 1,000 times and hope feels miles away. You must stare down the ghosts in your mind, the regrets that claw at your chest, and allow your tears to soak into the darkness. You have to rage against the emptiness, break open every brittle part of your heart, and only then, when you've surrendered fully to the ache, does something new begin to flicker alive inside, a stronger you, forged in honesty, a clearer you, honed by your vulnerability. Carl Jung famously warned, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their souls." I've felt the pull of that avoidance, switching on the TV, scrolling mindlessly, filling my hours with meaningless chatter, anything to drown out the stillness. But those brave enough to face themselves day after day, with humility and fierce compassion, become rare treasures in this world. They become whole. So if you find yourself wrapped in solitude's embrace, resist the urge to flee. Don't buff the surface with distraction. Instead, pause. Listen to the soft hum of your breathing. Feel the tremor of your heartbeat. Trust that this barren silence is fertile ground for something miraculous, a deep, unbreakable relationship with the person you've been too afraid to meet. Because, in the end, solitude isn't a sentence of isolation or punishment. It's a sacred reunion with the self you were always meant to become. Within its hidden fire, you are refined rather than destroyed, stripped of every mask until only the most authentic you remains. And when all the familiar voices and roles have been peeled away, what's left is breathtakingly simple and raw, not the polished version you showed the world, but the vulnerable, quietly powerful soul that has been waiting patiently for a space to breathe. Only those who dare to step into that heat emerge transformed. And once you do, you carry that inner flame with you forever. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. I've always been struck by how Jung didn't see our periods of loneliness as some awkward detour or unfortunate sidestep, but as the very pulse of life itself. In my own experience, it's when the world's clamor finally fades, when my inbox stops pinging and the laughter in cafes feels miles away, that I find myself standing at the threshold of something vast and unknowable, my unconscious. This isn't the fantasy land of pleasant dreams, but a raw, untamed territory filled with the memories I've shoved into corners, the fears I've tamed with busyness, and the instincts I've silenced in polite company. I won't sugarcoat it. Those first hours of stillness can feel like a slow unraveling. My heart pounds in the hush, my thoughts loop like broken records, and grief can rise like a tide. It feels frightening, even unfair, as though life has abandoned me just when I needed it most. Yet I've learned to trust that beneath that ache is a gentle invitation, a sacred nudge toward wholeness. Yes, solitude can feel like freezing winter, but just as snow blankets the earth before spring's resurgence, so does this inner quietness prepare us for a profound rebirth. In every tradition I've studied, whether the meditative silences of Buddhism, the contemplative deserts of Christian mystics, or the ecstatic whirling of Sufi seekers, there's this deep respect for solitude. They know what modern life often forgets, that the soul cannot grow in noise. And yet, these teachings also remind us that we can't just sit back and wait for magic to happen. We have to show up for ourselves with curiosity and compassion. When I sit in that silence now, I don't try to fix anything. I ask myself, what have I refused to feel? What part of me have I labeled unworthy? As I lean into those shadow aspects, the regrets, the doubts, the anger, I am surprised by how tender they become. They shift from being my worst enemies to my wisest teachers, whispering where I need courage and where I need forgiveness. This is the heartbeat of individuation, gathering every fractured piece of yourself, light and dark, to stand in your full truth. It's not about polishing away your flaws or pretending perfection. It's about daring to say, "Here I am, entire and unedited." And when you do, the world you re-enter is never quite the same, because you carry inside you a luminous core that no outside noise can ever steal again. I've come to see that the kind of deep, unwavering self-acceptance we crave rarely blooms in crowds or casual chatter. It demands solitude, discomfort, even a kind of inner fire. In our culture, we're taught to sidestep pain at every turn, to chase quick fixes like emotional band-aids, and to believe healing should feel smooth and painless. But true transformation, the kind that reshapes the very architecture of your soul, is anything but neat. It's messy, raw, and often painful. I've felt the jagged edges of grief tearing at my heart, the hot pulse of anger demanding to be heard, and the strange, unexpected beauty that emerges when you let your tears fall without shame. Real healing cannot be rushed. It insists on being honored in all its glorious chaos. When you embrace solitude, you learn patience in its purest form. Time stops becoming a blur of to-do lists and notifications, and instead stretches out before you like an empty canvas. I'll never forget the first morning I truly noticed my breath, each inhale a revelation, each exhale a surrender. In those spacious moments, you begin to sense the subtle currents of your feelings, the tremor of anxiety slipping away, the whisper of hope rising from your chest. You realize how much noise you've been living under, constant background chatter that kept you from hearing your own heart. And in that hush, you discover what it is to be wholly present with yourself for perhaps the first time in years. That presence opens the door to forgiveness, not just toward others, but toward the parts of yourself you've labeled unforgivable. I once clung to the story "I'm too broken," as if wearing my wounds would keep me safe. Yet in solitude, I met that narrative face to face and watched its power dissolve. When you stay long enough with your self-judgment, it loses its grip, and you find the grace to let it go. You begin to whisper truth over every wounded place. You are enough. You are becoming. The heavy scripts that once bound you, "No one will ever understand me. I don't deserve love," fade, like old graffiti, under the rain of honest self-compassion. Solitude also rekindles your ability to dream, not just about climbing ladders or ticking off accomplishments, but about living with purpose and authenticity. In the quiet, I've asked myself questions I'd long ignored. What brings me joy when no one is watching? How can I infuse kindness and presence into my days? These questions don't demand immediate answers. Instead, they guide you gently toward rewriting the script of your life, anchored in your truth rather than someone else's expectations. Yet not everyone will take this path. Many will sprint past the hush, filling every moment with noise, half-hearted connections, or digital distractions. But those who dare to stop running, who sit in the heat of their fire and let it refine them, become something rare, grounded, rooted, and astonishingly free. They're still human, still susceptible to pain and longing, but they carry within them an unshakable stability, born not from avoiding life's storms, but from walking bravely through them, heart open, eyes wide, and spirit unbroken. I've come to believe that this is the true alchemy of solitude, not a sentence handed down by fate, but a sacred initiation, a slow, deliberate peeling away of every mask you've ever worn until only your most authentic self remains. When you emerge, you carry the wisdom of fire in your bones. You become a lighthouse, steady against any storm, quiet, unwavering, and unmistakably alive. Then, almost imperceptibly, the season of solitude begins to shift. There's no grand fanfare, no celestial trumpet, or flashing spotlight to announce your graduation. Instead, you feel it in the stillness, the hush that once felt like it would crush you, now feels like an embrace. The gnawing ache of loneliness softens into a gentle companion, like the hush of dawn after a long night. You realize, with a catch in your throat, that you've made it through the fire. But what happens next is the real adventure. It's tempting to believe that once we've faced ourselves in solitude, we can simply slip back into our old routines, back to the familiar rhythms of work, social engagements, and relationships that once defined us. Yet the truth is, you don't return as the person who left. Inside you, values have realigned, priorities have shifted, and the things that used to exhilarate you can now ring hollow. The very relationships you once clung to may feel discordant, and activities that once filled your days now seem pointless. At first, this dissonance can feel like being a stranger in your own life, a guest at a party where you no longer recognize the music. Friends may look at you sideways, unsure how to relate to this quieter, more intentional version of yourself. Some will cheer you on, others will pull, ever so gently to draw you back into old patterns. But here's the thing I've learned. You don't owe the world the version of you that no longer exists. Your growth is real, and it deserves to be honored. First by you. Integrating your transformation into everyday life isn't about grand proclamations or public declarations. It's about showing up authentically, without apology. It's about speaking less, but with more weight behind each word. It's about choosing connections from a place of alignment, not loneliness. It's about learning to say no, not out of fear, but because your boundaries have become sacred vows you keep with yourself. You refuse to abandon your own needs for the fleeting approval of others. This inner strength is quiet, but it's impossible to ignore. People can feel it in the calm way you hold space for them, in the gentle confidence behind your gaze, in the unflinching integrity of your actions. And as you walk this path, you begin to attract what truly resonates with the person you've become: friendships rooted in mutual respect, opportunities that honor your deepest values, and projects that ignite your soul rather than drain it. In this way, your solitude doesn't end, it simply transforms, guiding you into a world that finally feels like home. Your outer world begins to shift in subtle, astonishing ways, mirroring the quiet truths you've uncovered within. At first, the changes feel almost imperceptible. You notice you no longer tolerate relationships that drain your energy. You gravitate toward conversations that nourish your spirit, and even your routines reshape themselves around what truly matters. Yet as these shifts gather momentum, you realize they're not whimsical coincidences, but the natural echo of your inner transformation. And when life inevitably throws its curveballs, an unexpected criticism, a sudden disappointment, you meet them with astonishing grace. Discomfort ceases to feel like a looming threat. Instead, you recognize it as familiar territory because you've already sat with your shadow, you've befriended your solitude, and you know exactly how to find shelter within yourself. That, more than anything, is your power, the unshakable knowledge that you are your own home. In many ways, solitude teaches you to cultivate an inner rootedness so deep that the storms of the outer world no longer uproot you. Rejection still stings. Of course, it might sting less, but it still pierces. Failure still hurts, yet it feels less like a condemnation and more like a guidepost, a whispered cue to course correct. And silence, once the loudest demon in the room, now feels like an old friend, a soft cushion upon which your soul can rest and inhale peace. I've experienced this firsthand. After years of frantically seeking validation, I discovered that the real validation I craved had been sitting quietly inside me all along, waiting for me to stop running long enough to acknowledge it. Perhaps the most profound gift you carry back from solitude is the gift of presence. In a world that hustles on caffeine and dopamine hits, your calm becomes a rare elixir. You no longer feel compelled to impress strangers or perform for an audience. You've learned your worth isn't measured in likes or applause. Instead, you listen with unguarded attention, tuning in not just to the words people say, but to the tremor in their voices and the silence between their sentences. You ask questions that reach beneath the surface, offering space rather than quick fixes. Without even trying, you become a mirror for others, reflecting their pain and yearning. It's in these moments when someone's eyes brighten because they've finally been heard that you realize your true service isn't in preaching lessons, but in embodying the stillness and compassion you found in your solitary hours. Yet even as you move through the world with this newfound grace, you never abandon your sanctuary of solitude. You return to it like a pilgrim, circling home sometimes for an hour, sometimes for days, simply to recalibrate, to honor the well you still draw from. Because, the journey of self-discovery is never complete. There are always deeper layers to unveil, fresh shadows to invite into the light, and old stories to rewrite. But you carry a living compass, now the memory of your resilience, the echo of your breath in silence, the spark of fire that once felt like it might consume you. And with that compass in hand, you are always guided back to what matters most, your true self, unwavering and free. And that's the beauty of this journey through solitude. You emerge carrying a calm strength, a clarity of purpose, and a presence that can light the way for others. Now I want to hear from you. What has resonated most with you today? Which insight are you going to carry into your life practice? Drop a comment below with the one lesson you've learned and how you'll put it into action. If you like this video, please leave your comment below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.